Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm sitting here with the wonderful Andrew Scheps. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. I'm good.
You just literally, well, like an hour or so ago, got off a plane from Heathrow, Gatwick?
Yeah, Heathrow.
Heathrow.
Yeah, that is true.
So, and it is evening. So
I'm a little loopy. I'll tell you the truth. Yeah.
Did you take any sleeping pillages or anything?
No, I had 2 beers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you for coming all this way.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Obviously, the NAMM-tastic NAMM is coming up. So, are you going to do some speaking stuff in there? This will probably be after NAMM anyway, but...
Yes, I will. By the time you see this, I will have already done speaking things at NAMM. Yes.
Marvellous. And one of those things is we're going to talk about, we're actually going to open up and work with the Omni-channel here, but I presume that's what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it came out at NAMM last year, so it's a year old, which I guess could be old, but it's also, I think, still doing well enough that there's stuff worth talking about. So I'm hoping this year I'll delve into more of the underbelly and not go over the basic functions.
I mean, I certainly don't know it inside and out, but I'll tell you, it was about, I think it was the first couple of weeks it came out, and I was working with my friend Cameron Webb. You know, he's a great rock guy, does Motorhead and did loads of Orange County punk bands and stuff. And what he loved about it was it just sounded good immediately.
That was the point. The default settings on the knobs were chosen with care. There's a lot of time spent on that. So
we did a video, like, completely none of the Waves guys knew what we were doing. We're just like, let's do a video on it. And we just started messing with it, and sure we didn't cover 1/100th of what it could do.
That's all right, though. I mean, that's the point. It does lots of stuff. There's lots of very complicated stuff with MS and sidechain and blah, blah, blah. But it needs to open up on the screen, be obvious, and immediately sound fun. Like, oh, great, I am now making this sound better, not let me get the manual, figure out what's going on. You know, we definitely didn't want it to be one of those plugins where, like, no sound comes out because you don't know what you're doing. Right. It's just super, super simple, but really deep.
Fantastic. So I noticed that Hozier, or Hozier, depending on how we want to pronounce it, has a new album. And I think is it just come out or coming out?
I think it's coming out. There's been an EP, there's been a single, and another single, and a video, and a thing. But I think it's coming out in a few weeks.
When did you start working on the record?
Oh, months ago.
Months ago. It's been quite a process.
Yeah, but not even solid. Just like everyone disappears for a few weeks, and then they come back, and then they disappear for a while.
Great. And where? Yeah. Where are you doing it?
At home, just mixing at home.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That must be, was that always the dream, to, like, get to a place where you can...
Well, I've been doing it because I had, even when I was on the Neve, that was the house. So
oh, wow.
I've been mixing at home for 20 years, I think.
Great.
Yeah. So it's good. Just now the home's different and it's just a computer.
Entirely in the box?
Yeah.
When was the transition point? Ish.
Right around his first record, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his first record was, I believe, one of the first things I did completely in the box, 100%.
Was it intentional, or was it by necessity?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Do you think the stemming thing is a big part of it? Because when people come back to me and go, "Can you stem out?" and you're like, "Oh my God," through the console, you're like, "That's a day."
Yeah, I mean, it was everything. It's more about the recalls and the fact that they don't get back to you for 3 weeks after saying, well, listen right away, and then you don't hear it. And it just, I was turning down. So that happens to you as well? Oh, always. Yeah.
You're like, I've got it up on the console. You know,
and you have a talk before the record, and they all say they understand what that means, but they don't anymore. No, but I enjoy not having gear.
So no...
Absolutely
external bass compressors.
Nothing. Nope.
I suppose I've got to ask you then, with your own channel, are you using it on everywhere? Some things? Do you have favorite positions?
It's pretty much on everything.
Yeah.
It's my template, which has been growing for 10 years or whatever it is. It has all sorts of stuff in it, and actually very few of the omni-channel, because there's no EQ in the template. It's all compressors, and it's just parallel chains. But anytime I need an insert on anything, it's 90% of the time now, it's omni-channel. It's great. So it used to be there were 5 or 6 plugins that were the 90% of the time. But the whole point of building that thing was to take all the stuff I wanted from all of those and shove it into one place. And I was worried, like, maybe it won't work out, but it's easily 90% of the time. It might be more. It might be 95%.
What was the thought process? I mean, I understand that for the thought process, but what were you thinking of, specific emulations, or was it just more of like hitting certain points? I needed to do this, this, and this. It
was a combination of a lot of things. I mean, first of all, it was build a channel strip, and I've never liked channel strip plugins because they're either all one very specific thing, like the SSL channel strip, and I don't necessarily want an SSL EQ, but I might want the compressor or whatever, and then you're stuck with all this other stuff. Or they aren't anything in particular. Like I think the first channel strip plugin was the Metric Halo one, and it's great, but it is certainly at the beginning, it wasn't really anything. It was just, here's a plugin that has all the stuff here, and it wasn't trying to have color. But then all the stuff that I like has different colors. So, but also I didn't want to say, well, okay, it's an EVQ, because I like some bands on the EVQ, but I like some bands on a Pultec. I like some bands on a 560. I like other bands on a 550A. And so it was this opportunity to combine everything into that. So the 3 different types of distortion they're not models of anything, but they're all based on things. And the same with the 3 compressors. They started life as, because the obvious examples, VCA is an SSL, the FET's an 1176, and the Opto is an LA2A. But they're not that, because you have completely variable ratio, which you don't have on an 1176, and you don't have any choice on an LA2A, but you do in the plugin. So it's that style of thing with color from that thing, but then every single bit of it just grew. And it's not just like, the compressor has 3 different types. Every band in EQ has 2 different weird color modes and then a fully parametric mode. So if you really like the upper mid wideband thing, you're not stuck having to decide whether you're going to use it or whether you're going to use the parametric because you need to suck out some nasty high mid. You can take the low shelf and turn it into a parametric and suck out something at 16K if you want. It doesn't matter. They all overlap. And so every tool in it just became this Mondo version of what I'd been using anyway.
See, I don't think I'd realized that, but now that's quite exciting, because to me, it's like the Pultec, it's the ultimate boom and fizz, isn't it? You just come in, you put it in your master bus, you put a bit of 60 or 70, depending which version you have, a bit of 10 or 12, you put it on your mix, and it's like, so I understand where you're going now. And then I think about, the mid-range on a Neve is just super sweet. But then the API, especially when you're working on drums and you want to cut frequencies and stuff, isn't it? It's the best sounding cut.
And then there's also things like the 560, where as you boost or cut more, the Q narrows.
Right.
But we actually, and to be honest, I don't even remember whether it's mid or tone, the wideband on one of those is taking the idea of what the 560 does, but spreading it to the 3 sliders. Right. So it's as if you push up +3 at a certain frequency, it's like pushing +3 on a 560 slider at that frequency, and then +1.5 at the slider above and below. So you actually get this weird scooping thing. So it's like a bandwidth that you wouldn't get on any EQ, but it is that 560 really sparkly thing. But I always found when I really boost that, you start to kind of hear it narrow up, and it doesn't ring, but it gets a little too specific. So I would always be adding a little of the bands to either side. So build it in. So just all the stuff that's great about those things, and then fix all the stuff that was annoying me about those things. And then also make it so that you could switch between the types and have it be as transparent as possible. So you can just audition 3 different compressors with very similar settings, similar makeup, similar amount of harmonic distortion, and just go, do I want the Opto? No, I'll stick with the FET or whatever, but without having to reset anything.
That's exciting. Now you make me want to go back and re-explore it on all of that basis. I don't think I've heard it spoken about like that. It's very, look, you can look around, I've got API, I've got the SSL, I've got the Poltex and Neves and all kinds of stuff. And I understand it's like you reach for a certain thing, especially because maybe you can explain your thought process, but for me, it's always like a sound that I've heard. Like if I want, people said to me, how do you get an AC/DC drum sound? I always just say, use Neve EQ. Because to me, it's the 60 on the Neve, on the kick, and then it's either the 110 or the 220 for the tub on the snare. So I completely understand why you would want, I need this because when I do my drum sound, I need this, this, and this. It's quite exciting.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I find a lot of times when you're working in the box, because you've got so much choice, you tend to not bother. Like you could put 5 different EQ plugins on the same channel and say, because I want the mid-range from this type of EQ and the low end from this, but you won't do that.
No.
Nobody does that.
No, I don't.
So they pull up the EQ that they use 90% of the time, and they'll make it work 90% of the time. And so it was trying to get everything on the screen at once so you could be super lazy, but still kind of have the whole toolbox so you would still think creatively, even though you're just using the same plugin over and over. And plus the fact you can reorder everything. And then there's some very odd things you can get into because each of the individual modules can be MS or not. And if you go into Duo, like on the EQ, it just unlinks the left and right controls. But if you do it on any of the dynamics processing, it completely changes the way the detector works. It's like unlinking them. So it's a really flexible thing, but without giving you 5,000 knobs in your face, so it's hard to use. It's sort of laid out as if it were very simple, and then you can dive inside and get done.
That's amazing, but I agree. We've just been teaching like a little mini masterclass here, and I have utilitarian things that I always use, and because I don't want to think too much.
You want to mix. You want to get on with it. You want to just go after what you're hearing and not think.
I mean, when did the REQ come out? We have Mr. Waves over there, like maybe 94 or something?
Yeah, maybe a little bit later.
Maybe 95. I mean, we both remember when it came out. I still use it every day. I still go, if I want a high and low pass something, I just go, blah, blah, there it is, done. Yeah. I don't think twice about it. I don't really need to be, auditioning like 15 different things. So I understand that premise of like, if you can have everything be in one go. And I did used to like that original channel strip. There's the Metric Halo, the one with the green and black. There was one that came with Pro Tools in one of the bundles in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, it probably was. Because, it was kind of the only one for a long time.
Yeah, it was definitely, and it was just called channel strip.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one. But you're right, it had absolutely no personality.
And now I think it does, but it is that idea of trying to be somewhere in the middle with all that.
But now that digital for us is really pretty darn accurate. I mean, back in the 90s, there was a lot of coloration from the 888s or even the D24 and all that other architecture that we had back in those days. Now we can choose things to add color, and we can try to bring this world back into the mixes. So that type of channel strip there used to be a saving grace for me now, but yes, I wouldn't use it. I'd be looking for coloration all the time.
Yeah.
And so this song, I pulled up a song that we did, actually recorded here, and it's almost, I wouldn't say it was in the box sort of recording, but we did this, the way we did it is we did it in a very, back to this sort of utilitarian way. We used a Audient, so an inexpensive I/O, and we restricted ourselves to using fairly inexpensive microphones because we wanted to and this was mixed live streaming on a pair of headphones.
Right.
Which is your world,
That is my world.
Yeah, and headphones, I didn't really know they were blue Lolas because I wanted to get headphones that, I've got some really expensive headphones, but I wanted to try and do things the way that most of the people who watch these kind of videos work. Because it seems like you want to make a product that people, can actually use.
Yeah.
So I thought this might be a really good song for us to sort of look at. And I wanted to, ask your advice, have a listen. What would you change? What would you take off? Where do you think something could be improved? So I am completely throwing him under the bus because you haven't heard the song. We haven't even
Perfect.
played it now.
No, I still haven't heard it. No.
But that's great. I like this because this is, if I was watching a video, this is what I would want. I wouldn't want a completely planned out version of how everything's going to be. I'd want you just to listen and go, that sounds cool, but that could be better.
Let's see what happens.
Okay, so David's song it's pop rock, acoustic driven. Everything was tracked here on a little drum kit. Like I was saying, we did it using fairly inexpensive equipment so that we could, help the people that watch the stuff, help our community, because there's so many people that are trying to come up and make music, and you're mixing in a box, the whole world is changing. So.
Yeah, great.
So, do you want to listen to it, Beck?
Yeah.
I'm throwing you under the bus pretty heavily here.
Yeah. I mean, I think rather than try and sort of do a mix, what we'll do is we'll ignore the vocal, because that's going to be the thing that would be hardest and have the track around it, and we'll sort of break it down as if I were starting to mix. So we'll go to the drums and things like that, but keep what you've got and either replace what's going on or just pretend that that's the way it was recorded, and we'll just add some stuff and just see what happens. Yeah. So
great.
That way I don't have to think too much. We can just sort of focus on individual things and say, oh, why don't we try this?
Great.
And we'll see what happens. So,
love it.
All right. But yeah, let's have a little listen, like up through into the chorus.
So I'll just mute the vocal for the time.
Yeah. Can we go louder, or do we feedback if we go?
Oh no, you can go louder.
So let's see what's going on with the drum.
Now it's pretty simplistic drums, essentially kick and snare based.
See what's going on.
Please.
All right, good. So we got a kick sub.
Yep, kick
so
sub. Yep.
That's good. So let's, we'll just solo up kicks. All right. And I'll just pretend it's all one track. I'm not even going to look at individual tracks, and we'll just pop this guy on here. This is another little thing with it. The very first time you instantiate, it takes a minute. And then after that, you can put another 100 in, and it takes a second. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the plugin, because I've done that all over the place, but basically it's 5 modules.
Yep.
Preamp, which is a little bit of saturation. There's odd and even harmonics, which is basically just that, and then heavy, which is a clipper. You get high pass and low pass filters. They had to go somewhere, and it made sense to have them where it would normally be in the beginning of the chain. And then thump, which is sort of like Fairchild or Pi or Helios resonance, that thing where you switch the circuit in and you don't boost anything, but you get this low end boost from either transformers or just feedback within the circuit. So it's really like a super wide EQ at 100 hertz.
Great.
But it's not a shelf, and it's not quite EQ. So anyway, that's preamp. Gate is the gate, just is a gate. De-esser, there are 2 of them, and they're completely full frequency, which is awesome. And there's some cool stuff. We'll do this later once we've got the bass going, because we'll make the kick and the bass, we'll make the kick DS the bass down in the 60 hertz range, just as a thing, because why not?
Nice.
Then the EQ, and what I was talking about before, you've got 3 bands for each EQ. So the third for every band is parametric, and every band of the EQ is 20 to 20K So you got a fully parametric band. If you happen to be using 3, it doesn't matter which 3 you're using. The other one can go do some parametric thing. The shelf, you've got a resonant shelf and a regular shelf, which we just had to call them something and have a little picture. But these are very different models of things. It's not just, oh, here's a shelf. This is not a Q10. You know, these are all very colored, and the mid and the tone have a wide and a narrow, and those are very different sounding things.
Great.
And then the compressor, like I was talking about before, you've got 3 different types of compressor, but with a unified set of controls, so attack, release, ratio. And this infinite to 1, basically, on the FET, it's kind of like going all buttons in on 1176, but we tweaked it. On the VCA, it's kind of like the infinite ratio on the SSL, which is just super smacky, but it's tweaked. And then on the opto, we just kind of went nuts because there isn't really an opto compressor that does that. Most of them are fixed ratio, and some of them have a couple of, like, 2 choices. But so the idea was, well, we have to make it do something. So it's like a crazy, weird, spitty version of a slow compressor, which is whatever. But that way you can flip back and forth. They can all be reordered. You just drag and drop them, and they just go in what order you want. They all individually switch stereo, duo, or MS. And then you also have an insert point where you can put in any Waves plugin. So if you want a flanger in between your de-esser and your EQ, then put the flanger in and drag your insert over. We probably won't use the insert now.
But that's actually a huge feature.
And the reason it exists is because originally we had 2 different EQ modules. We had one that would only boost, and it was the musical EQ, and then we had one that would only cut, and it was the surgical EQ. And then we decided that, first of all, we didn't want to have 2 modules just for screen real estate. And second of all, that was limiting a bit too much. We wanted to be able to boost or cut, whatever people want to do.
Great.
So then I said, great, but what if I want an EQ before and after my compressor? And people at Waves said, no problem, we'll put an insert. And then it turned out it was a little bit of a problem, but it took a while. But once they got it working, then they said, well, it doesn't have to just be, so the modules here are all available. So if you look in under EQ, you've got the SOC EQ, which is just another one of these EQs. But you could put in the 73, you could put in phase, but you could also put in guitar and put in stomp boxes or put in anything you want. So once they got it working, all of a sudden it just opened up this huge world. Because again, another reason why you might want to stay away from a channel strip is, well, what if I want to put something in between? Then what do? Do I have 2 channel strip plugins and I deactivate half of it and blah, blah, blah.
So when the insert comes in, you can move it around.
Oh yeah, it can go anywhere.
Oh, that's genius.
Well, there's nothing in it, so it won't.
Right, I understand that. I saw it.
Yeah.
I've got to say, how long did you work on this?
A year and a half, I think.
I was going to say, the way you're explaining it doesn't sound like somebody invented something for you and you put your name on it.
No. I mean, I showed up with this.
This is real.
I showed up with this PDF of like screenshots of plugins and things, and I sort of photoshopped. It looked like a ransom note, and it was like, this is what I want the channel strip to be. Yeah. And then it got refined and changed along the way, but it took about a year and a half, and a lot of time was spent on the clipper, because that was huge for me, because I use lo-fi on everything. I love lo-fi.
I love lo-fi.
And
you put it on like 0.1.
Exactly.
And it's a genius.
Yeah. It turns out that part of the genius is you also get 0.9 dB as soon as you turn the thing up, which is awesome. But it's a clipper, but it's got a really weird shape to it. Like if you look at it.
Because you can basically, distortions, high end, saturations, dark. So great,
but
I find
just using the distortion, it's got a shape that's unlike any other clipper I'd seen. It isn't just like, oh, it's a second order clipper or whatever. It's just got this really tight little knee. So we kind of looked at that and then tweaked and found a version. So that's what the heavy became. So there was a lot of time spent on some very specific things.
That's fantastic.
Like the 4 shapes of the de-esser. You know, originally it was like, well, let's put a Q control and a center frequency, and it's like, no, it's too complicated. So
I mean, you've got 2 infinitely variable multi-band compressors there.
Yeah.
Masquerading as the word de-esser.
Exactly.
It's great.
And we just called it DS just so people would know what it was supposed to be doing, because every other name we came up with was stupid.
Right.
But
infinitely variable multiplied by compressor.
yeah. Okay, so anyway, so on the kick, so you can hear that length.
Yeah. It's nice.
Really quickly, just an overall thing. The other thing is when you first put the plugin in, everything is bypassed.
Right.
And even with everything in, it's zero latency, because we wanted live guys to be able to use it.
Great.
As soon as you touch a control, that module becomes active.
Right.
But in this case, just the thumb. So the saturation is still inactive and the filters are inactive, and they are doing zero CPU load. So that's the idea, is rather than put 100 of these in and all of a sudden you're screwed. You can put 100 of these in the session, and until you touch a knob, it's the same as not having any. There's zero load. Okay, so anyway, so I like the thumb. We'll do some clipping. Maybe that's a little too much. And then I really like this resonant shelf.
It's great.
And of course, all the default frequencies, I wanted them to be like really weird ones, because it's like, oh, that's exactly where I would put it. But we sort of compromised on things. So that's a little lower than I might put it, but it tends to work all the time. That's probably it. But let's see what happens if we slow attack. I don't like the compressor. So,
but unlike an 1176, you put your attack and release in the right direction, so we can understand what it works.
Exactly. All right, let's get the compressor. So basically, tiny bit of saturation.
Yeah. That tiny bit of
thumb.
saturation has compressed it enough.
Yeah, and that's it, and some EQ. So together.
That's great.
Really, just
it's really
lively.
Extended that low underneath. It's given it some.
Yeah, it's just a little more length and a little more air. Yeah. I mean, it's what you would do. So snare. Let's see what's going on here.
Then there is some samples underneath.
Okay. And it looks like there is a bus as well, right?
Yeah. And there's only 1176, so you could take it off.
Actually, let's leave it on, just because we'll use the gate to take some of the length out instead. You see how it comes up quick. So let's use the gate, because why not? So another thing, every single one of these modules has an expanded view, because you don't see all of the controls for any of them until you expand. So there's high pass and low pass.
You do know when I've used it, I didn't know you could do that.
A lot of people don't. Like, I'm going to be at the NAMM show, and normally I go through all the basic stuff, and I've decided that this show I'm going to do only advanced stuff.
Right.
Because no one knows you can even do half of it. So I'm going to just high pass the side chain. And again, this resonant shelf.
Oh, that's nice.
And then I can't remember which one it is. I think the wide on the tone is the sort of Neve-ish one, which, like you were talking about before.
Yeah. For the body, yeah.
And again, you always need some
saturation. Nice.
Interesting.
Well, because there's no cymbals, I was using the overheads for dirt. But it's interesting, now you're adding the dirt on the kick, giving that little...
Well, let's see if we can get that sort of length out of the compressor.
Great.
And then if you open this was actually something I didn't have to fight for. They were fine with it. But it's a full EQ on the side chain.
That's fantastic.
Of the compressor. So we can high pass it a little bit. Let the kick through a little more. And then let's actually take some of that mid-range out so it lets it through. And I'm actually going to put the pre after the compressor. Oh, and every EQ, if you hold down Control, it solos the band.
Another feature I didn't know about. That's fantastic.
Which is, it's a good...
I mean, for guys like us, that's fantastic, because everything these days is visual aids.
Yeah.
That's a sonic aid. That's...
So this is... That's pretty good destruction.
Yeah, I like it.
Find our bass.
So the bass, yeah, is actually, it's 2 instances of DI, and I take just the DI for the low end.
Right.
Or no, in this one I think I may have used the amp because there was a buzz on the DI or something. But yeah, I just take one of the sources and separate them.
I'm just going to do something for the sake of it.
Please.
So let's make this too boomy. And then let's do the thing I was talking about. So we'll check out this de-esser. So what we'll do is we'll find the frequency that we think is going to be too boomy in here. Again, with the Control key.
Nice.
So let's pretend it's going to be around there. Now, so with the de-esser, I can just lower the threshold and it'll start sucking that out, which of course is ridiculous because I've just added it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you open this up, see, well, you can actually get to it from the main channel. You've got an external side chain. So let's set the side chain to bus 42 because it's in the middle. And then I'm going to go up to the kick sub, and we'll do it that's okay, that'll be fine. I said 42, right?
Yep.
Ooh, bus 41, 42 is being used. All right, we'll make it bus 48. And we'll do it pre and send it off. So now this is going into bus 48.
Yep.
Which is showing up here as the side chain. And so now, but of course, these don't make it. Gotta have them both up. So it's a little subtle, but you can hear it starting to suck out some low end whenever the kick goes.
Yeah.
which of course they're playing together almost all the time.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, I played bass on this, so I wasn't very inventive.
no, it just doesn't show this up.
Yeah.
But this is actually, for organic music, it's not great. But
Yeah.
if you're doing a dance track or something,
Sure.
and you've got a super buzzy bass, a lot of time, sidechain compression is God on those types of tracks.
Yeah, totally.
But if you do it on a really buzzy bass off the kick, the whole bass will pump, which can be cool, but not if you're just trying to get definition between the kick and the bass. You really only want to suck out low end.
Sure.
So by sidechaining the de-esser, you can just suck out low end of the bass and your buzz stays constant. So you could switch from sidechain compression to sidechain de-essing and completely change how the bass is changed based on the kick. So it's a failed experiment here, but you know.
Would you then sum your kick and bass together? And just maybe just shave the top of those and make sure that they're...
No, I mean, because they're going to get summed in the mix bus at some point. So no, that would take time. I'll show you something I do on guitars all the time. A little bit of heavy, and a little bit of this guy wide at around 1.4.
It's nice. Adds a little
It
chime.
sort of, it like uncompresses a little bit.
Yeah, has a little chime to it as well.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because you see the amount of work we did on this. This guitar was, we found it too fuzzy and too fizzy.
Right.
So I overdubbed this. I overdubbed this guitar because it was too zzz, and that your plugin just actually solved some of the problem we were having.
And the same thing on this guy, but then like this is a good candidate for the compressor as well. So a little 1.4. It's just a great, it really kind of explodes. And then on this, I'd go like optical nice and slow, take away a little of the attack. And you know, normally on a compressor I'd be tweaking all these, but we set up starting points that aren't even how I would normally start on some of these compressors, but I don't bother tweaking because why?
Right.
I see getting a bunch of gain out of that too, but these three, right? Again, that kind of same thing. And just a tiny bit of the fet can just bring out some dirt. It's just a much spittier.
Bring out the lack of fade in that edit.
Yeah. I think if I move all of these guys over, then we can bypass them all at once.
Great.
All right.
I think you're good. I think it's all clear except for those.
All right. So if I do that and that, and then our guitars. And we do shift, is it shift 3?
It is.
Yeah. That should be, yeah. Kicks over the top.
A little bit, but it's interesting because these new speakers I've got an extended low end. And I normally mix when I mix in a console using the 120, the subharmonic synthesizer.
Right.
And I couldn't get that low, and this is giving me that low, so.
Yeah, so we'll back off on that. Another thing is combining the high pass with the thumb.
Yeah. That's nice. Fantastic.
So some stuff.
It's great.
It's
Yeah.
fun. I love that it gives you enough stuff on the screen at once that you do actually mess around more than, at least I mess around with stuff more than I would. Like there's so many things that I would never put a compressor on. I don't do insert compression ever, unless I'm doing an effect,
Right.
except for vocals really. And now I do it all the time, a tiny bit of compression on things, which I'd stopped doing for years, you know? So,
Right.
yeah, but because it's there, you do it. Yeah.
That little guitar trick, I'm stealing that, and the thump is definitely coming up. Those are two.
It's fun. The
two
thump,
good.
it's the only thing about the thumb is it can be deceiving. It's one of these things you've got to get used to what it sounds like, because at first, like, yep, sounds great on everything. And then you listen back in a month, like, oh, hold on a second, because it's really, really wide.
Right.
So it's great, but use it judiciously.
But one of the things I notice when a lot of mixes I get is people have a hard time with low end. And there isn't many plugins or things that add that sort of like 20 to 40 underneath the kick. You know, we're sitting there boosting 60 naturally, all of us do that. But it still doesn't sound quite the same as when you're on a console and you've got the subharmonic synthesizer or something, or bringing in the NS10 and flowing it underneath. So now for mixing in a box, I think that...
yeah, having a combination of the thump and the low shelf and the high pass filter can really, really shape what the low end does through this, and changing the order of it. Obviously with EQ doesn't matter, but getting things pre or post your compressor, or high passing the detector on the compressor, you know, all that stuff.
Yep.
And to do it all inside of here. Yeah.
That's great. And the insert feature, which I actually, even though I can now see it clearly says insert, I've never used. So that's pretty huge. That's going to be massive as well. Being able to reorder it.
It's great. For some reason, like one of the things I do a lot is I'll put torque on the insert if I'm doing a drum, and that way I can sort of retune the drum a little bit while I'm EQing and compressing, instead of having two windows open or whatever. So I'll move that somewhere in the chain, because usually what'll happen is I've tried to not do that, because I like to leave things as much as like they came to me as I can. But then when you realize, oh God, I really do need to drop the pitch of that kick, you want to do it somewhere in the middle of the processing. Because one of the reasons you probably want to do it is the compression isn't really catching it right. So you want to do it pre-compressor, but you want to do it post-EQ, because you've already EQ'd based on what came in. And you like that sound, you don't want to have to take all those frequencies up or down once you've tuned the kick. So anyway, it's great to be able to just throw something like that in the middle.
That's amazing. Wonderful. And I like the guitar pedal idea as well.
Yeah. Well, that, and also just like a reverb. Put a reverb in the middle, because now you can compress and distort and EQ your reverb. So you turn the omnichannel into a reverb plugin that just has an absolute shit ton. Do you say shit ton in your videos? Yeah, an absolute shit ton of processing that can go either side of it.
Right.
So,
That's great. Yeah, I'm always EQing reverbs these days. It was something that crept into me with very, very dense mixes. I was like, I could never control my low end. And I'm like, oh yeah, because I've got all this reverb just humming away. You know, and I've always knew about the Abbey Road for years, but, you know, I've always thought of it as a certain effect, you know, the Beatles used or something like this.
Right.
And now I realise it's just a godsend to be able to EQ.
Yeah, well, or DS descend into a reverb,
DS
you know, because you like the plate, but every S catches it like crazy. We'll just DS it.
Yep, DS it, even with some drum stuff.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want is like that. You know.
Well, it's another thing I use the de-esser for a lot is nasty cymbal stuff. Because I don't want to just notch that out, because when they're on a different cymbal, that's nice air. But then when they start the crash ride, it takes your face off. So you can just open up the de-esser, put it in duo mode, only do the right side.
I see.
Pop the threshold down. So now, when he's hitting the crash on the left, there's not enough level to trigger it on the right, so it leaves it alone. When he's on the crash ride, fine. And then I'll find myself automating these things in and out, too. Just automate it in for the section that it's annoying on.
That over-the-top ride cymbal that's blowing up your...
Yeah, but if you take care of it in a static way, it will usually unbalance the drums a little bit or whatever. So you really do need to treat it just in those spots or just when it's loud. So the de-esser type of thing, you know, it's an active EQ.
That actually, I had a session just a couple of days ago where my assistant, we did percussion. So the assistant comes up to the overhead. The drummer comes to the overhead.
Yeah.
The assistant gives me 2 more clicks of gain. We go back into the next song, 2 clicks of gain, it's still on the overhead. And I'm like, it's ultra washy on the left-hand side. And of course, that would be a really good godsend on that, because that's really hard to undo when you've got
once it distorts, it's difficult to get rid of. And the fact that you can audition it and blah, 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 it's good. And there is it's almost a notch when you're in the tight waveform here, bandwidth. It's pretty tight. And then, you know, you can do normal sort of shelf de-essing if you want.
Great.
Or shelf de-booming. Really good on acoustic guitar. You do either the wide or the low shelf for the boom of the body, and then you can do the notch just for the really annoying finger picking string attack thing. So you can really find just where it's going, click, 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 and dial that back a little bit.
I find acoustic guitars a godsend for de-essing, so that I'm really going to get into. The other thing is like overly digital electric guitars. I reach for de-essers all the time. Yeah. You know, especially when I'm trying to actually brighten them but control the brightness, if that sounds silly, you know. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And that, in combination with the EQ, like you heard what this mid does on the wideband, that thing, just a dB in that area below the fizz to bring the tone back out it's awesome.
I'd never really heard the 1/4 work like that. I
just found it randomly. I wanted, and it's just something in my head that's a fad, and I'll stop doing it. But at the moment,
that's
really where this like throaty tone lives, and that's what I want to bring out, because it's always below where it starts to get fizzy. Whereas you know, you got 2.5 or 5K. Yeah, it's great, but it's noisy and it's harsh and it fights with things. Nothing else is going on at 1.4 that you're bringing out.
Sure,
because even the cool part of the bass is 700 to 1K ish. So you're right above it, and there's nothing else there.
I never thought about it. That's the truth. And only because when I first started working here, a lot of the rock guys, like the heavy rock guys, take about 2 and pull it out. Yeah. To get that. And that's...
Start scooping,
Start scooping out there. But I know one of my favorite tones, I'm sure yours as well, is an AC30. An AC30 is definitely that 1.5 kind of area.
It's all about the mid-range.
All about the mid-range,
Yeah.
Great. Well, this has been fantastic.
There you go.
Open up a whole new world.
Excellent.
Marvelous. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
It was marvelous.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sure there is tons of other, you know what, we'll put links to other videos if you want to know more about the plugin.
Yeah, there's a very in-depth, it's not a tutorial really, but I go through every single thing about the plugin that we shot when it first came out. So that's on the Wave site and is useful.
Okay, well, we will link to that below here, so check that out. Marvelous. Well, thank you ever so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. And please leave questions and comments below.